It's not the screams of the insane that echo from St. Jude's Asylum. It's the laughter, a chilling, innocent peal that still rings from its abandoned walls, inviting you to join a game that never ends. Hidden deep within the sprawling forgotten bayous of Louisiana, shrouded by ancient cypress trees, draped with Spanish moss, lies the eerie, crumbling complex of St. Jude's Asylum for the criminally insane. Built in the early 1900s, it was a state-of-the-art facility, but notorious for its controversial joy therapy methods, which involved highly theatrical, almost carnival-like environments designed to stimulate positive emotions in the most disturbed patients. In the sweltering summer of 1952, St. Jude's went dark. All patients and staff, including its brilliant but eccentric director Dr. Julian Blackwood, vanished without a trace. The official report cited a sudden outbreak of a highly contagious fatal delirium, leading to an immediate permanent quarantine and abandonment. But the hushed, terrified accounts from the few local trappers who dared approach the perimeter spoke of a different, more unsettling truth. Not a disease, but a profound, unnatural gaiety emanating from within the asylum's walls. A chaotic symphony of childish giggles and distorted calliope music that seemed to pull at the sanity of anyone who listened. St. Jude's became a desolate monument to a failed experiment, its existence eventually fading into obscure medical archives and chilling, unspoken bayou legends. This story begins with Dr. Alice Chun, a 36-year-old experimental psychologist and acoustic neuroscientist, a woman who chased the elusive nature of manufactured happiness. Alice wasn't interested in traditional ghost hunts. She sought the imprint of extreme emotional resonance, the quantifiable energetic signature left behind by profound joy, terror, or most particularly distorted euphoria. St. Jude's Asylum, with its legendary joy therapy and the inexplicable vanishing of its entire population, was her ultimate horrifying case study. She'd pored over fragmented, heavily redacted patient journals from the 1950s, hinting at bizarre localized neuroacoustic feedback loops and peculiar psychic phenomena detected by early crude psychotronic equipment, and unverified anecdotes from terrified families who claimed that after a loved one was admitted, their last letters spoke of the endless party and laughter that felt like teeth. Alice believed St. Jude's Asylum's true horror lay not in the madness it held, but in the terrible, consuming joy it created. She never intended for her research to amuse her. She certainly never intended for the asylum itself to orchestrate her final performance. But fragments of her journey, her terrifying descent into the laughter's abyss, survived, captured on her specialized high-frequency neural resonance drones, meticulously transcribed from her biofeedback helmet's internal audio logs, and ultimately retrieved from a meticulously encrypted, partially melted data core, surgically implanted within her abandoned research airboat found weeks later, miles from the asylum's desolate perimeter. The first definitive sign that something was irrevocably wrong didn't come from a spectral presence or a sudden chill in the hot, stagnant bayou air. It came from the air itself, or rather its utter defiance of conventional acoustic principles. Alice had navigated the treacherous, overgrown waterways and the dense, mist-shrouded swamps for hours, guided by her advanced GPS mapping and the increasingly erratic readings from her long-range psychoacoustic detectors. She finally located the perimeter of St. Jude's Asylum, a sprawling, dilapidated complex of crumbling brick and rusted iron fences, its shattered windows like vacant eyes staring out at the murky water. The air hung thick, hot, and strangely devoid of the usual sounds of a healthy swamp environment. No buzzing insects, No distant animal calls, no croaking frogs. Just a profound, suffocating stillness. She spoke into her field recorder, her voice low, professionally detached, though a subtle undertone of profound curiosity, tinged with nascent unease, was already present. July 20th, 11 a.m. Location St. Jude's Asylum, Louisiana. Bayou. Ambient noise levels dropping precipitously within 50 meters of the main complex. Registers below typical environmental background. Approaches absolute acoustic silence. This is anomalous. Extreme sound absorption. Consistent with folklore. It's like walking into an auditory vacuum. She paused, listening intently to the unsettling quiet that pressed in on her eardrums. It wasn't just quiet, it was an emptiness of natural sound, an unnerving void that seemed to actively consume all noise, all chatter. She moved deeper into the complex, her reinforced boots crunching unnaturally loud on the scattered debris, the sound immediately swallowed by the oppressive silence. She found the main entrance to the asylum, a massive rusted steel gate seemingly fused shut by time and corrosion. But then a faint rhythmic thump, thump, thump resonated from deep within the structure. A colossal slow beat, like a monstrous muffled laughter. It wasn't the sound of settling ruins or distant machinery. It was too regular, too powerful, too impossibly alive and contained. It seemed to defy the very acoustic silence it was shrouded in. Hours passed under the oppressive sunless sky perpetually, veiled by the dense, low-hanging mist. The silence grew heavier, more pervasive, now accompanied by a subtle, almost inaudible pressure building behind her eardrums. She tried to dismiss it as a psychological effect of extreme sensory deprivation and prolonged acoustic paradox. But the sensation persisted, a dull ache that resonated deep within her skull, mirroring the rhythmic thump. Her biometric suit registered erratic neural activity, localized spikes in her frontal lobe, often associated with processing emotion, even though there was no external emotional stimulus to process. Her portable neural resonance drones, after hours of sweeping the vast silent ruins, finally locked onto a major, undeniable anomaly, not just zero ambient noise, but a consistent, rhythmic neuroharmonic frequency emanating from deep beneath the asylum's foundation. This frequency was not astrophysical. It was fluid organic, like a vast pulsating signal. And from its very core, the thump intensified to a palpable throb, along with a faint luminous pulse, captured by the drone's exotic energy imaging. Not heat, but pure contained euphoria. A deep, impossible carnival red, like faded velvet or dried blood, but somehow terrifyingly intrinsically sentient. She whispered into her recorder again, her academic detachment fractured by awe and profound dread. The source, it's deep, beneath the main recreation hall, emitting a non-thermal luminous pulse, a deep organic carnival red. The rhythmic beat, it's emanating directly from its core. The pressure, I feel it clearer now. It's like the asylum is listening. The folklore mentioned laughter that felt like teeth. This is it. This is the source. This is what truly drives St. Jude's Asylum. A cold metallic taste filled her mouth, the taste of burgeoning existential dread. Driven by a dangerous, irresistible combination of scientific imperative, fueled by the sheer impossibility of her discovery, and a burgeoning icy fear that chilled her to the core. Alice located the precise epicenter of the pulsing, carnival red anomaly. It was a section of the asylum's deepest sublevels, beneath what used to be the grand recreation hall, were massive concrete sections and rusted. Remnants of carnival ride mechanisms lay half-buried in the damp earth. The air here was utterly still heavy, with a profound earthy scent now tinged with a faint, cloying sweetness like stale popcorn, mixed with something vaguely electrical like ozone from old arc lights. The carnival red light pulsed from within the very ground, a vast subterranean core, its rhythm a slow, deliberate beat that seemed to synchronize with her own. She noticed peculiar, intricate patterns within the exposed bedrock itself, not just natural striations, but swirling inclusions that resembled warped faces or perhaps trapped fragments of distorted glee. She moved cautiously towards the source, her suit's lights cutting solitary beams through the oppressive gloom. The ground beneath her felt unnervingly soft, despite its solid appearance, almost like walking on vast, taut membranes. She could hear her own heartbeat unnaturally loud, echoing only within her own skull. But then other sensations began to intrude not from outside, but from within her own mind. Faint, fragmented memories, half-formed thoughts, almost whispers of impossible. Melodies rising and falling with the carnival red pulse. It was profoundly disconcerting, like her own. Cognitive processes were being played back to her, distorted and amplified, woven with other alien impressions of manic happiness. She reached the center of the anomaly, where the carnival red glow was brightest. Here, amidst the wreckage of the sublevels, something impossible was located. It wasn't just rock. It was a vast organic mass pulsating softly, half-buried beneath. The ground, its surface slick and vaguely membranous, radiating the carnival red light. It was massive, stretching out of sight into the unseen depths. It had the distinct rhythm of the thump-thump-thump she'd felt. This was the source of the asylum's endless pulse, a colossal organic conductor. And then, just beside the pulsating mass, something horrifying came into focus. Not machinery, but a humanoid figure partially submerged within the glowing shifting. Organic mass, as if caught mid-absorption. Its face agonizingly clear, despite the faint carnival red glow, was contorted, not in a scream of pain, but in an expression of manic, unending laughter. Its hands, outstretched fingers, splayed as if clapping, in perverse delight. It was a man, likely Dr. Julian Blackwood, himself the eccentric director from 1952. His features were distinct, his expression raw, horrifying glee. He was not merely a corpse, he was perfectly horrifyingly preserved, his essence suspended within the own. Living tissue, a testament to an unspeakable, eternal performance. Alice stared horrified. This was beyond anything she had conceived. Not geological, not even neurological, biological. She activated her bioscanner, pointing it at the organic mass. Of flesh, the readings were impossible, not inert, not dead. There was persistent bioelectrical activity, faint, erratic, but undeniably present. The mass wasn't just preserving, it was sustaining. Against all logical judgment, compelled by a desperate need to understand, Alice reached out a gloved hand and gently placed it on the surprisingly warm, yielding surface of the organic mass encasing the man's arm. The moment her glove made contact, a searing jolt, not physical, but purely mental, shot through her. Her vision blurred, filled with a blinding flash of carnival red light. And then she was plunged into a torrent of raw, unfiltered sensation. Not words, but a rapid-fire sequence of images and emotions. The sudden crushing weight of unnatural joy, the agonizing sensation of her own sadness being amplified to impossible levels, then abruptly ripped away, replaced by a horrifying uncontrollable mirth, the horrifying realization that her very essence, her capacity to feel authentic emotion, was being consumed, absorbed by the entity around her. And then a single agonizing voiceless giggle, echoing in an absolute suffocating void of forced merriment. The vision lasted only a fraction of a second, but it felt like an eternity. Alice recoiled, tearing her hand away from the living mass, gasping for breath, her heart hammering against her ribs. The internal thump-thump in her head intensified, now accompanied by fainter, more ethereal tunes from within her own mind, like a broken calliope playing an endless distorted waltz. This was not a passive entity. This was a living orchestra, and it held conscious agony masquerading as joy. The mental jolt from touching the organic mass reverberated through Alice, leaving her gasping, disoriented, her mind reeling from the torrent of borrowed euphoria. She stumbled backward, her suit's internal systems screaming warnings about neurological overload. The chilling images of the director's final moments, the crushing forced happiness, the horror of emotional perversion, the voiceless giggle, were burned into her retinas, echoing in her thoughts. The profound acoustic void of St. Jude's asylum seemed to press in harder, now no longer just an absence of sound, but a conscious, palpable presence. The subtle thump-thump-thump from the ground intensified, transforming into a deep, resonant bass note that vibrated through the very ground beneath her feet, through the soles of her boots, up into her bones. It felt like a colossal living drum, beating out a vast, patient, predatory rhythm of sanity's undoing. She spoke into her recorder, her voice hoarse, strained. July 20th, 2:40 p.m. Direct contact made with organic anomaly. Experienced immediate, intense psychological feedback. Shared subjective experience of emotional warping. The entity. It captures authentic emotion. It preserves the euphoria. The mass is not inert. It's a living generator converting suffering into joy. My brainwave patterns are erratic. My mind, it feels stretched, muted, unnaturally happy. She paused, listening to the new, deeper bass note. The tunes. It's still there. Faint, rhythmic, from within. She forced herself to calm, to analyze. The data streaming from her bioscanner pointed at the living mass was impossible. High concentrations of complex biological polymers interwoven with unknown fluid structures, and persistent high-level bioelectrical signatures far beyond typical cellular decay rates. These were not dead organisms. They were suspended alive, in some terrifying, agonizing state of perpetual forced merriment. The entity was a living, sentient biological machine, capable of absorbing and retaining the essence of life and its final panicked moments of utter psychological distortion. As she moved carefully through the derelict sublevels, avoiding direct contact with the most intensely pulsating patches of the organic mass, the bass note deepened, becoming a vast resonant symphony that seemed to emanate from every surface. The air itself began to shimmer, subtly distorting her vision. She started seeing fleeting ethereal images projected directly into her mind's eye, not memories of the director she touched, but other fragmented emotional experiences. A blurred figure of a nurse briefly appearing in her peripheral vision, dancing a grotesque jig, her frantic pleas for release, muffled by unnatural, joyful cackles, then twisting, stretching, fading into abstract light. A terrified patient rocking themselves in a corner, their profound despair appearing, then instantly replaced by a hollow rictus grin. The agonizing surrender of a powerful ancient cypress root, its solemn life slowly consumed by the living euphoria. its centuries of quiet growth compressed into a single overwhelming pulse, a bizarre, unnatural glee. The living mass itself seemed to actively draw her in a seductive, irresistible pull emanating from its slick surface. It wasn't a physical suction, but a deep subconscious urge to step into its perfect stillness, to merge, to understand the profound emptiness, the agonizing peace it offered. Her gaze kept returning to the horrifying beauty of the pulsating mass, its internal carnival red glow, promising ultimate truth, eternal tranquility in emotional oblivion. She felt a profound sense of weariness, an aching desire to simply lie down on its yielding surface, to let the hum wash over her, to become part of its vast living memory of unraveling minds. Her own will felt strangely weak, the boundaries of her self eroding under the constant mental assault. She activated her specialized neuroacoustic dampening sensor, aiming it at the surface of the most vibrant patch of the organic mass. The readings were bizarre. The mass itself was generating a subtle internal emotional anomaly, actively bending and absorbing authentic human feeling, creating localized pockets of psychic euphoria. This anomaly wasn't a byproduct of physics. It was consistent, regulated, almost like the internal process of a vast biological system. This was a living organism, a colossal predatory entity, slowly consuming the very concept of genuine emotion. And then she saw it. Streaks of deeper, more vibrant carnival red within the mass, forming intricate pulsing patterns that shifted and flowed like vast, unseen neurological pathways. This mass was the entity's body, its flesh, its mind. She realized with a horrifying clarity that the legends were wrong. The asylum wasn't just abandoned, it was performing, and everything within it. The terrifying realization solidified in Alice's mind the living organic MISS was not merely a biological anomaly, but a vast predatory entity, slowly consuming and assimilating the very fabric of human emotion and sanity, transforming authentic feeling into its own monstrous unified form of forced glee. The constant low bass note vibrated through the air, growing more insistent, drawing her closer to the heart of the asylum's lowest level. The mental echoes were no longer random fragments. They became more focused, more personal whispers, not of the victims, but seemingly directed at her. You seek joy. We provide. Be absorbed. Be happy. The words were formless, yet undeniably present in her thoughts, a seductive, invasive presence. She stumbled forward, driven by a desperate need to find evidence to prove this impossible horror. She saw it then, an active emotional distortion zone. A section of a padded cell ahead seemed to ripple its soundproof walls, subtly absorbing light, then releasing it, defying visual stability. A rusted straitjacket inside briefly appeared to be moving with a grotesque jerking motion, and snapped back to its inert state, its material unnaturally stiff. Objects like scattered patient files or discarded medical tools would momentarily flicker out of existence, then reappear a foot to the left as if their emotional significance was stuttering. It was happening in real time. The process was slow, agonizingly so, but inexorable. Her solid perception of reality slowly warped, becoming part of the living, pulsating organism. Further ahead, closer to the largest section of the organic mass, she saw something even more disturbing. A large wild alligator, its form shimmering, half-submerged in the glowing, shifting organic mass, its powerful hind legs still free, but its front paws, torso, and head already solidified into translucent carnival red. Flesh, its eyes wide with unspeakable agony, reflected the terrifying beauty of the mass's glow. The bass note resonated from it, and Alice felt a surge of raw animalistic terror, a desperate futile struggle erupting in her mind as she inadvertently brushed her gloved hand against a low-lying section of the living mass. The alligator was not dead. It was trapped alive in its silent flesh tomb, experiencing eternal disorienting agony. "It's ongoing," she gasped into her recorder, her voice a raw whisper. "The assimilation. It's not a past event. It's happening now. It's absorbing living organisms. And they're aware. They're conscious within the flesh. Their emotions are perverted." She could feel a faint, almost imperceptible cold radiating from the very air around her, a subtle decrease in the ambient temperature that her suit registered consistent with a vast biological process consuming energy. The sweet, cloying scent was stronger, almost suffocating. As she watched the horrifying transformation of the padded cell, a fine, almost invisible vapor began to rise from the surface of the living mass, shimmering with faint carnival red motes. It was not mist, it was a diffusion of the entity's essence. A fine, almost gaseous form of the living tissue itself. It swirled around her suit, clinging to the visor, making her vision subtly blurry. She felt an unsettling tingling sensation on her exposed skin, around the cuffs of her gloves, and the unprotected areas of her neck. It was a subtle stickiness, a faint tackiness, like dried, invisible residue. She tried to wipe it away, but it seemed to cling stubbornly. Then, from the largest section of the living mass, the ground itself seemed to undulate. A wave rippled outwards from its colossal bulk, not of concrete, but of pulsating carnival red flesh, smoothly extending, seeking. And then from the surface of the mass, several translucent flexible tendrils gleaming with internal carnival red light slowly emerged. They were too perfectly formed to be natural roots or muscle. They were too purposeful in their movement. They moved slowly, sinuously, like probing fingers extending towards the flickering objects, towards the absorbing alligator, and terrifyingly towards her. The entity is not just consuming passively, it is reaching. The mental intrusions intensified, now accompanied by fragmented, distorted voices not from the air, but from within her mind. Terrified, pleading whispers, quickly twisted into horrific, joyful cackles, joining the entity's pervasive bass note. Laugh. With us, forever. She felt her own legs heavy, her movements sluggish, as if the very essence of the entity was beginning to seep into her joints, slowing her reactions. The terrifying realization solidified the entity wasn't just physical. It was a vast conscious joy orchestrator, a trap laid for decades, and she had stumbled into its very core. The translucent carnival red tendrils, gleaming with internal light, extended from the vast organic mass, inching across the damp ground towards Alice. Their movement was slow, deliberate, utterly silent, yet filled with an insidious, unyielding purpose. The mental intrusions roared in her mind, a chorus of fragmented pleas, quickly dissolving into horrific laughter and the entity's vast, unfeeling command. Amuse. Express. Be assimilated. She could feel a subtle, unsettling cold radiating from the tendrils, a cold that promised not comfort, but absorption into oblivion. Her own will felt fragile, battered by the constant psychic assault. She stumbled backward, desperately trying to evade the slow, methodical reach of the tendrils. Her suit's internal systems screamed warnings about high-frequency emotional absorption. The air around her was now thick with the fine, shimmering carnival red vapor clinging to her, suit her skin, permeating her every breath. The sweet, cloying scent was overwhelming, almost intoxicating. She risked a glance down at her gloved hand. A faint, almost imperceptible rhythmic twitching was beginning to form on the surface of her glove. A subtle jerky motion that looked disturbingly similar to the initial stages of forced merriment she had observed. She frantically tried to rub it off, but it clung, subtly hardening. It was already spreading. The entity was not just reaching for her, it was actively consuming her molecule by molecule, her very capacity for genuine emotion, becoming the preliminary layer of its terrible joy-devouring flesh. "It's on me," she gasped into her recorder, her voice raw with a terror that transcended scientific curiosity. "The carnival red vapor. It's infesting. I'm twitching. My mind, it feels happy." She tried to scream louder, but only a silent, choked giggle emerged, her fear itself being siphoned away, replaced by an uncontrollable, terrifying mirth. The massive organic mass from which the tendrils emanated began to pulse with a renewed, brighter carnival red light. The rhythmic thump-thump-thump intensified, rising in pitch, becoming a low, echoing calliope tune, like a vast, malfunctioning organ filling her head. The mental intrusions were no longer whispers, but loud, horrifying echoes of agonizing screams, thousands of trapped minds crying out in an unspeakable chorus of terror, quickly subsumed by an eternal forced laughter. This was the raw, unfiltered song of St. Jude's Asylum, composed of the final moments of all it had consumed, eternally cycling in a loop of perverse merriment. Alice knew she couldn't fight it physically. The tendrils were slowly but surely gaining on her, their fleshy tips almost touching her boots. The realization that she was facing a vast sentient predatory consciousness, one that consumed life and processed emotion, hammered into her mind with brutal clarity. She was just another performer for its endless carnival, another note, consumed by its terrifying living amusement. Her eyes darted around the crumbling sublevels, desperate. Her gaze fell upon her autonomous drone, lying discarded near the edge of the large anomaly, having crashed earlier due to the intense energy interference. Its outer shell was already partially coated in the thin carnival red vapor, but its internal recording systems, designed to be hardened against extreme environments, might still be functional. If she could reach it, if she could transfer her final, horrifying data, her last observations, before she became completely assimilated. It was a desperate, illogical hope. She lunged towards the drone, forcing her stiffening limbs to move. The carnival red tendrils, sensing her movement, accelerated their fleshy tips, striking the ground just inches behind her feet. The echoing calliope tune of the asylum intensified to a piercing whine, causing agonizing pain in her skull. The mental screams of the trapped souls became a deafening chorus, quickly twisted into a horrifying, joyful cacophony, drowning out her own thoughts, pulling her towards the edge of madness. She reached the drone, her stiff fingers fumbling with the data port. The rhythmic twitching on her gloved hand was visibly thicker, now her movements becoming slow, deliberate, almost puppet-like. She slammed her suit's data cable into the drone's port, initiating an emergency upload. The drone's small indicator light flickered green, then blue, then with a final desperate surge, glowing a steady carnival red, mirroring the light that consumed the asylum. Data was transferring, her knowledge, her warnings. But the tendrils were upon her. They wrapped around her legs, her arms subtle at first, then firm, pulling her gently, inexorably towards the vast, organic mass of the joy-devouring asylum. She could feel the carnival red film spreading rapidly across her entire suit, over her faceplate, slowly obscuring her vision, turning the world into a single, blinding, shifting haze of impossible forced happiness. The pervasive echoing calliope tune became a part of her, vibrating through every cell. The mental screams of the trapped souls were no longer external. They were her screams merging with the chorus, twisted into a sound of eternal hollow delight. Her final thought as the carnival red flesh fully encased her faceplate, her eyes wide and staring her, body frozen mid-jig, was not of fear, but a horrifying, agonizing clarity. She was St. Jude's asylum now, and she remembered every laugh. And she was performing. And deep within the Louisiana bayou, the silence of St. Jude's asylum was broken not by screams, but by a new horrifying peal of eternal unhinged laughter, echoing a show that would never truly end.